Admiral Zixton stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars bend and twist as his fleet moved through hyperspace. The smooth walls around him glowed with a soft blue light, and the floor felt warm under his scaled feet. Everything about Zentauri ships was beautiful, from their curved hulls to their crystal-powered engines. They had been perfecting their technology for thousands of years. The fleet was massive. 200 ships of different sizes moved together like a school of fish. The smallest patrol ships were still larger than most buildings, while the heavy cruisers stretched for miles. Each ship looked like a work of art, with flowing lines and surfaces that seemed to shift color in the starlight. Zixton had been leading fleets for over 50 years. He had conquered dozens of worlds and brought countless species into the Zentauri hegemony. Some fought back at first, but they always surrendered once they saw what they were up against. The Zentauri way was always the same. Arrive in overwhelming force, demand surrender, and accept the new members into their growing empire. Today would be no different. His target was a small yellow star at the edge of the galaxy. The system had only 8 planets, and only one of them had life. The species called themselves humans, and they had somehow learned to travel faster than light. This was interesting, but not unusual. Many species figured out hyperspace travel eventually. What was unusual was how quickly they had done it. Most species took thousands of years to develop, from basic tools to starships. The humans had done it in just a few centuries. Their first spaceflight had happened less than 200 years ago, and now they were already moving between stars. "Sir," said his communications officer, a tall being with 6 arms and green skin. "We are receiving the intelligence report on the human species." Zixton nodded. "Display it." The air in front of him filled with images and data. The humans looked strange, with only 2 arms and 2 legs. They had no scales, no fur, just smooth pink or brown skin. They were small compared to most intelligent species, standing only about 6 feet tall. Their technology looked primitive too. Their ships were made of metal plates bolted together, and they still used chemical rockets for some of their travel. They have only been a spacefaring species for 153 years, the officer continued. Their weapons are mostly kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives. They do have nuclear technology, but it appears to be very basic. Zixton studied the images of human cities. They looked crowded and chaotic, nothing like the elegant spires of Zentauri worlds. Their buildings were square boxes made of concrete and steel. Even their largest structures seemed tiny compared to what his people could build. "How many ships do they have?" he asked. "Approximately 300 vessels capable of interstellar travel. Most are cargo ships or exploration vessels. We estimate no more than 50 combat ships in their entire fleet." Zixton almost felt sorry for them. His fleet alone had 4 times as many warships as their entire civilization. The humans would take one look at his formation and surrender immediately. They would have to be insane to fight against such odds. "What about their government?" he asked. "They call it the United Earth Space Navy. It seems to be a military organization that speaks for their entire planet. They have been sending out exploration ships to nearby systems for the past 50 years. This was good news. A unified military government would make negotiations easier. There would be no need to deal with dozens of different nations or tribes. One surrender from their leaders, and the entire species would join the hegemony. "Time to arrival?" Zixton asked his navigation officer. 12 hours, sir." The admiral walked to the large window that covered one wall of the bridge. Through it, he could see some of his fleet. The ships moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with energy shields. Each vessel was a masterpiece of engineering, capable of destroying planets if necessary. But destruction was rarely needed. Most species were smart enough to recognize superior technology when they saw it. He thought about the humans again. Their rapid technological advancement was actually impressive, even if they were still far behind the Zentauri. In a few thousand years, they might have developed into something interesting, but that would take too long. The galaxy was big, and the hegemony had many more systems to claim. The humans would be given the same choice as everyone else: join willingly and keep their culture and freedom, or resist and be conquered. Most chose to join. The hegemony was not cruel to its members. They were allowed to keep their customs and govern themselves, as long as they followed the basic laws and contributed to the common defense. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we are receiving a transmission from the human system." Zixthon turned around. "Already? We are still hours away." "Yes, sir. It appears they detected our approach while we were still in hyperspace. This was mildly impressive. Most species could not detect ships in hyperspace until they were very close. The humans must have better sensors than their other technology suggested." "What does the message say?" he asked. "It is very short, sir. They are asking us to identify ourselves and state our intentions." Zixthon smiled, showing his sharp teeth. At least they were being polite. Many species just started shooting as soon as they detected unknown ships. "Send them our standard first contact message," he ordered. "Tell them we are the Zenthari hegemony, and we come in peace to offer them membership in our great alliance." The message was transmitted, and they waited for a response. It came quickly. "Sir, they are asking for more details about the hegemony and what membership involves." This was also normal. Most species wanted to know what they were getting into before making such an important decision. "Send them the cultural package," Zixthon said. "Let them see what they will be joining." The cultural package was a collection of videos and data that showed life in the hegemony. It displayed the beautiful cities, the advanced technology, and the peaceful cooperation between different species. It was designed to show potential new members all the benefits they would receive. Hours passed as they traveled toward the human system. The humans sent several more messages, asking technical questions about Zenthari technology and government structure. They seemed very interested in military matters, asking about fleet sizes and weapon capabilities. This was not unusual. Most species wanted to understand the military power they would be protected by. "Approaching the edge of the human system, sir," the navigation officer announced. "All ships prepare to exit hyperspace," Zixthon ordered. "Battle formation, but keep weapons powered down. We do not want to appear threatening." The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the very edge of the solar system, near the orbit of the outermost planet. Immediately, their sensors began picking up activity. There were human ships moving throughout the system and several large stations orbiting different planets. "Sir," the sensor officer said, "we are detecting approximately 40 human vessels moving to intercept us." Zixthon nodded. This was expected. The humans were sending their entire fleet to meet his arrival. It showed they understood the importance of this moment. "Open a channel to the human fleet," he ordered. "Channel open, sir." Zixthon straightened his uniform and activated the main screen. In a few moments, he would be speaking to the representatives of humanity. By the end of the day, they would either be new members of the hegemony or prisoners of war. He hoped it would be the former. The screen flickered to life, and Zixthon found himself looking at a human face for the first time. The being was smaller than he had expected, with pale skin and short gray hair. The human wore a dark blue uniform with metal badges on the chest. Behind him, Zixthon could see other humans working at control stations that looked incredibly primitive compared to Zenthari technology. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Navy," the human said. Her voice was calm and steady. "You are in Earth territorial space. Please state your intentions." Zixthon was impressed by her composure. Most species showed fear or excitement. During first contact, this human seemed almost bored. "I am Fleet Admiral Zixthon of the Zenthari hegemony," he replied. "We come offering your species membership in our great alliance. We have sent you information about the many benefits of joining us." Admiral Chen nodded. "We have reviewed your materials. We decline your offer." The words hit Zixthon like a physical blow. In 50 years of leading first contact missions, no species had ever refused membership. They might ask for time to consider or try to negotiate terms, but they never simply said no. "Perhaps you do not understand," he said carefully. "The hegemony offers protection, advanced technology, and peaceful trade with hundreds of worlds. Your civilization would benefit greatly from our guidance." "We understand perfectly," Chen replied. "We choose to remain independent." Zix then looked at his officers. They seemed as confused as he felt. He turned back to the screen. Admiral Chen, you must realize that our fleet could easily defeat your forces. We have 200 ships, each more advanced than anything your species has ever built. Surely it would be better to join us peacefully than to force us to use violence. For the first time, the human showed emotion. She smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. It reminded Zixthan of the way predators looked just before they attacked. Fleet Admiral, she said, are you threatening us? I am simply stating facts. Zixthan replied. We prefer peaceful solutions, but we will use force if necessary. Then we have nothing more to discuss. The screen went black. Zixthan stared at the empty display. This was not going according to plan. He had expected the humans to be reasonable. Their rapid technological development suggested they were intelligent. Why were they choosing to fight a battle they could not win? Sir, his sensor officer called out, the human ships are taking defensive positions around their inner planets. Show me. The main display changed to show the human solar system. 47 human ships were moving into formation near the fourth planet from the sun, a red world the humans called Mars. The ships looked exactly as primitive as the intelligence reports had suggested. They were ugly metal boxes with chemical rocket engines and what appeared to be kinetic weapons. Analysis of human vessels, Zixthan ordered. Sir, their largest ship is approximately 800 meters long. Hull appears to be steel armor plating over a framework structure. Weapons include magnetic railguns, missile launchers, and what look like nuclear warheads. No energy shields detected. No particle beam weapons. Technology level is approximately 1,500 years behind ours. Zixthan studied the formation. The humans had arranged their ships in defensive layers, with their largest vessels in front and smaller ones behind. It was actually a competent tactical arrangement, but it would not matter against Zenthari firepower. Their formation is interesting, his tactical officer observed. They seem to understand military strategy. It will not help them, Zixthan replied. Prepare the fleet for battle. I want this to be quick and decisive. Disable their ships if possible, but do not hesitate to destroy any that pose a threat. The Zenthari fleet began to move forward. Their ships spread out into an attacking formation that would surround the human forces. Each Zenthari vessel was a work of art, with smooth curves and glowing energy fields. They moved through space like dancers, graceful and deadly. The human ships waited. They did not try to run or scatter. They just held their position and waited for the attack to come. Human fleet is hailing us, sir, the communications officer announced. Put them through. Admiral Chen appeared on the screen again. This is your final warning, Zenthari fleet. Leave our system now, or we will consider you hostile forces and respond accordingly. Zixthan almost laughed. Admiral, you have 47 ships. We have 200. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. This is not a battle you can win. Perhaps, Chen said, but we will fight anyway. That is what humans do. The screen went dark again. All ships, Zixthan announced on the fleet communication channel, engage the human forces. Try to disable them, but protect yourselves first. The battle began with a display of Zenthari superiority. Energy beams lanced out from the alien ships, striking the primitive human vessels. The first human ship exploded in a ball of fire and metal, then another. The humans tried to fight back, firing their crude missiles and railgun projectiles, but the shots bounced harmlessly off Zenthari energy shields. But something was wrong. The humans were not panicking. Their formation remained steady even as ships died around them. Their communications were calm and professional. They fought like soldiers who had seen real combat before. Sir, his tactical officer said, the humans are not trying to win. They are trying to delay us. Zixthan looked at the battle display. It was true. The human ships were not concentrating their fire or trying desperate attacks. They were fighting a careful retreat, making the Zenthari work for every victory while slowly falling back toward the inner system. What are they delaying us for? He wondered out loud. His question was answered by Admiral Chen's voice coming. over an open communication channel that reached both fleets. Zenthari Fleet, this is Admiral Chen. You have engaged the 3rd Outer Defense Squadron. You are hereby classified as a hostile force. All Earth ships withdraw to safe distance. Primary fleet response is authorized. Primary fleet? Zixthon said. What does she mean? These are their ships. His sensor officer looked up from his station with a confused expression. Sir, I am detecting a massive hyperspace distortion behind the human formation. Show me. The display changed to show the space behind the human ships. The stars were bending and twisting as something very large prepared to exit hyperspace. The distortion was bigger than anything Zixthon had ever seen. Sir, the sensor officer said in a shaky voice, whatever is coming through is enormous. The mass readings are off our charts. Zixthon felt cold fear creeping up his spine. How big? At least 10 kilometers long, sir. Possibly larger. The space behind the human formation tore open like fabric being ripped apart. What emerged made every Zenthari officer on the bridge freeze in terror. It was a ship, but unlike anything they had ever imagined. It was a massive gray wedge of metal and armor, covered in weapon batteries and sensor arrays. There were no elegant curves or artistic designs. It looked like it had been built for one purpose: war. The human dreadnought hung in space like a sleeping giant. Its weapons slowly turned toward the Zenthari fleet. Energy readings from the single human ship were higher than Zixthon's entire fleet combined. By the 7 suns, his tactical officer whispered, What have we done? The bridge of Zixthon's flagship fell completely silent. Every screen showed the same impossible sight: a human warship that dwarfed their entire fleet. The computer systems were struggling to process the sensor readings. The ship was not just large, it was dense with weapons and armor that their scanners could barely penetrate. Full sensor sweep, Zixthon ordered, his voice cracking slightly. I want to know everything about that ship. His sensor officer worked frantically at the controls. Sir, the readings are incredible. That vessel masses approximately 50 million tons. Hull thickness appears to be over 20 meters of some kind of composite armor. I am detecting over 3,000 weapon emplacements of various sizes. 3,000, Zixthon repeated. His entire fleet had fewer than 800 weapons total. Yes, sir. And that is just what we can see from this angle. There are probably more on the sides we cannot observe. The massive human ship hung, motionless in space like a predator watching its prey. It made no threatening moves, but its mere presence was more intimidating than any weapon. The surviving human ships from the Outer Defense Squadron were moving to positions behind the dreadnought, like children hiding behind a parent. Sir, the communications officer said nervously, we are receiving a transmission from the large human vessel. Put it through. The screen displayed a new human face. This one was older than Admiral Chen, with white hair and scars on his weathered skin. His uniform was black instead of blue, and his eyes held the cold look of someone who had seen many battles. I am Fleet Admiral Marcus Stone, commanding officer of the UESN Retribution, the human said. His voice was deep and carried absolute authority. You have attacked ships under my protection. Explain yourselves. Zixthon tried to regain his composure. Admiral Stone, I am Fleet Admiral Zixthon of the Zenthari Hegemony. We offered your species membership in our alliance. When you refused, we attempted to demonstrate our superior force to convince you to reconsider, by attacking our ships and killing our people. Stone replied flatly. We attempted to disable your vessels. Any deaths were regrettable but necessary. Stone's expression did not change. Admiral Zixthon, you have entered our system with a hostile fleet, ignored our warnings, and opened fire on our ships. In our military code, that makes you an enemy combatant. Do you wish to surrender? The question was so unexpected that Zixthon almost laughed. Surrender, Admiral? Even with your impressive ship, you are still vastly outnumbered. We have 200 vessels to your 1. Actually, Stone said calmly, you have 163 vessels remaining. We have been monitoring your fleet composition since you entered the system. Zixthon checked his fleet status display. Stone was correct. The battle with the Outer Defense Squadron had cost them 37 ships. How had the humans counted so accurately? Admiral Stone, Zixton said, your ship is impressive, but you cannot defeat our entire fleet alone. Probably not, Stone agreed. But I do not have to. Admiral Chen, status report. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication channel. Sir, Retribution is at full combat readiness. All weapon systems online, point defense networks active, structural integrity at 100%. Excellent, Stone replied. You may begin the demonstration. Before Zixtan could ask what demonstration they meant, the human dreadnought opened fire. The first salvo was unlike anything the Zenthari had ever seen. Massive magnetic cannons launched projectiles at incredible speeds. The rounds were not just metal slugs. They were sophisticated warheads that exploded into clouds of smaller projectiles just before impact. A single shot destroyed 3 Zenthari. Cruisers' energy weapons followed the kinetic barrage. But these were not the elegant particle beams that the Zenthari used. These were crude, brutal lasers that burned through shields and armor like they were paper. The beams were so powerful they left glowing scars across the hulls of ships they merely grazed. Evasive maneuvers, Zixtan shouted. Return fire. His fleet scattered in all directions, trying to avoid the devastating human weapons. Several ships managed to fire back, sending their best energy beams toward the human dreadnought. The shot struck the massive vessel and simply vanished into some kind of defensive field that surrounded it. Sir, his weapons officer called out, our energy weapons are having no effect. The human ship appears to have some kind of absorption system. What about kinetic weapons? We do not carry kinetic weapons, sir. All Zenthari ships use energy-based systems. Zixtan stared at the tactical display in growing horror. His beautiful, advanced fleet was being systematically destroyed by a single human ship using weapons that seemed almost primitive. But the way they used those weapons was anything but primitive. The human gunners were incredibly accurate. Every shot found its target. They seemed to know exactly where each Zenthari ship would be before it got there. The defensive fire from the human ship was equally impressive. Clouds of small projectiles intercepted every missile and torpedo the Zenthari launched. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we have lost 43 ships in the last 6 minutes. At this rate, the entire fleet will be destroyed in less than an hour. How is this possible? Zixtan demanded. Our technology is thousands of years more advanced than theirs. I do not think it is, sir, the officer replied quietly. Look at their targeting systems. They are predicting our movements perfectly. Their weapons are crude, but incredibly effective. And that defensive field around their ship is absorbing energy that should be impossible to contain. Zixtan was beginning to understand. The humans had not shown them their real technology during first contact. Everything they had seen before was either outdated equipment or deliberate misdirection. This ship represented their true capabilities. Fleet, Admiral Stone, he called over the communication channel. I request a ceasefire to discuss terms. The human weapons fire stopped immediately. Stone's face appeared on the screen again. What terms did you have in mind? Stone asked. Perhaps we can reach a peaceful agreement, Zixtan said desperately. The hegemony is always willing to negotiate with equals. Equals? Stone raised an eyebrow. 5 minutes ago you were demanding our surrender. Now we are equals. Zixtan had no answer for that. Admiral Zixtan, Stone continued, let me explain something about humans. We do not like bullies. We especially do not like bullies who threaten our families and friends. You came to our home with superior numbers and demanded we submit to your authority. When we refused, you attacked us. In human culture, that makes you an enemy. But we can change, Zixtan said quickly. The hegemony respects strength. Clearly, humanity possesses great military power. We could become allies instead of enemies. Stone seemed to consider this. Perhaps, but first, you are going to leave our system. You are going to return to your leaders and tell them exactly what happened here. You are going to explain that humanity will not be conquered or intimidated. And you are going to make sure they understand that any future contact will be on our terms, not yours. And if we refuse? Stone's smile was not pleasant. Then the demonstration continues until there are no Zenthari ships left to refuse. Zixthan looked at his tactical display. He had started the day with 200 ships and complete confidence in Zenthari superiority. Now he had fewer than 120 vessels remaining, and he was completely outmatched by a single human warship. "We accept your terms," he said quietly. "Excellent," Stone replied. "You have 1 hour to collect your survivors and leave the system. Any ship still here after that time will be considered hostile and destroyed." The screen went dark, leaving Zixthan alone with the wreckage of his fleet and his shattered assumptions about human weakness. As the Zenthari fleet began the humiliating process of collecting their dead and wounded, Zixthan tried to understand what had gone so catastrophically wrong. He stood on his damaged bridge, watching repair crews work frantically to fix systems that had been overloaded by the human weapons. The elegant curves of his flagship were now scarred with burn marks and impact craters. "Sir," his intelligence officer said hesitantly, "I have been analyzing the human ship's weapon systems. The results are disturbing." "Show me." The display, filled with technical data that made Zixthan's blood run cold. The human weapons were not just powerful, they were designed with a completely different philosophy than anything the hegemony had ever encountered. "Their magnetic acceleration cannons are incredibly simple in design," the officer explained, "but they achieve muzzle velocities that exceed our most advanced particle beams. The projectiles themselves are multi-stage warheads that adapt to different types of targets." "Adapt how?" "If they hit an energy shield, they release electromagnetic pulse charges to disrupt the field. If they hit armor, they become shaped charges that concentrate explosive force into a narrow point. If they hit a ship with multiple compartments, they fragment into dozens of smaller projectiles that spread throughout the vessel." Zixthan studied the data. "These weapons are designed to kill, not disable." "Yes, sir. And that is not the most disturbing part." The officer changed the display. "Look at their defensive systems." The screen showed a detailed analysis of the field that had surrounded the human dreadnought during the battle. It was not a traditional energy shield at all. It appears to be some kind of electromagnetic manipulation field, the officer continued. It does not block incoming energy weapons. Instead, it captures the energy and redirects it into the ship's power systems. They are literally feeding on our attacks. Impossible. The power requirements for such a system would be enormous. That is what I thought too, sir. But look at this. The display changed again, showing the internal structure of the human ship as revealed by their scans. The entire vessel is built around a series of fusion reactors. Not one or two like our ships use, but dozens of them. The ship's power output is almost beyond measurement. Zixthan stared at the images. The human dreadnought was not just a warship. It was a mobile power plant. Every system was designed for maximum energy output and efficiency. There were no decorative elements, no artistic flourishes. Every square meter of the ship served a military purpose. "Sir," another officer called out, "we are receiving a communication from the human vessel." "Put it through." This time it was not Admiral Stone who appeared on the screen, but a younger human in a different uniform. This one wore the white coat of a medical officer. "Zenthari Fleet, this is Dr. Sarah Martinez aboard the UESN Retribution. We are offering medical assistance to your wounded. Our sick bay can accommodate non-human physiology." Zixthan was confused. "You are offering to help us? After we attacked you?" The doctor nodded. "The wounded are no longer combatants. It is our duty to provide aid regardless of species or political affiliation." This was completely unexpected. In Zixthan's experience, victorious species either demanded tribute or enslaved the defeated. They did not offer medical care. "We accept your offer," he said after a moment. "We have 17 ships with critical damage and approximately 400 wounded crew members." "Understood. We are dispatching medical shuttles to your position. Please instruct your ships to power down weapons and open their docking bays." The communication ended, leaving Zixthan even more confused. The humans had demonstrated devastating military power, but now they were showing compassion for their enemies. He had never encountered a species that could switch so quickly between destruction and mercy. Within minutes, small human shuttles began moving between the damaged Zenthari ships. Each shuttle was loaded with medical equipment and human doctors. Zixthan watched on his external cameras as the humans worked alongside Zinthari medical staff to treat the wounded. "Sir," his communications officer said, "I am monitoring the human medical frequencies. Their doctors are sharing advanced treatment protocols with our medical staff. They are teaching us new techniques." "Why would they do that?" "I do not know, sir. Perhaps it is part of their culture." Zixthan decided he needed to understand these humans better. He opened a direct channel to Admiral Stone. "Admiral Stone, I must ask you something. Why are your people helping us? We attacked you. By all military doctrine, we are your enemies." Stone appeared on the screen, and for the first time, his expression was not cold. "Admiral Zixthan, let me explain something about human nature. We are capable of great violence when threatened, but we take no pleasure in unnecessary suffering. Your wounded crew members are no longer a threat to us. Helping them costs us nothing and prevents needless death. But we are enemies." "Are we?" Stone asked. "You attacked us because your leaders told you we were primitive and would surrender easily. Now you know the truth. The question is what you do with that knowledge." Zixthan thought about this. "What would you do in my position?" "I would go home and tell my superiors that they need to find a new approach to dealing with humanity. I would explain that we are not interested in joining your empire, but we are not necessarily opposed to peaceful relations with species that treat us as equals." "And if they refuse to listen?" Stone's expression hardened again. "Then you had better hope you are not the one they send to enforce their will." The communication ended, leaving Zixthan with much to think about. He walked to the window and looked out at the human dreadnought. The massive ship hung in space like a sleeping predator, its weapons powered down but ready to activate at a moment's notice. "Sir," his sensor officer called out, "I am detecting additional ships entering the system." Zixthan turned around quickly. "More human vessels?" "Yes, sir, but these are different. They appear to be cargo ships and support vessels." The display showed a dozen human ships approaching from the outer system. Unlike the military vessels, these had civilian markings and were clearly not designed for combat. "They are heading for the battle site," the officer continued. "It looks like they are beginning salvage operations." Zixthan watched as the civilian ships began collecting the wreckage from the destroyed Zinthari vessels. They worked efficiently and professionally, treating the debris with respect rather than simply scooping it up randomly. "Sir," the communications officer said, "the human civilians are asking if we want them to recover the bodies of our dead for proper burial." Once again, Zixthan was surprised by human behavior. Even in victory, they showed respect for their enemies. "Tell them yes," he said quietly, "and thank them for their consideration." As the hour deadline approached, Zixthan prepared his remaining fleet for departure. The humans had kept their word. Medical aid had been provided, survivors had been rescued, and the bodies of the dead had been recovered. No further attacks had been made despite the overwhelming human advantage. "Sir," his tactical officer said, "all ships report ready for hyperspace transit." Zixthan nodded. "Signal the fleet. We are leaving." As his ships began to enter hyperspace, Zixthan took one last look at the human system. The massive dreadnought still hung in space, watching their departure. It was a sight he would never forget. He was returning to the hegemony with news that would change everything. Humanity was not a primitive species to be easily conquered. They were something far more dangerous. A young, aggressive civilization with advanced technology and the will to use it. The galaxy was about to become a much more complicated place. 3 weeks later, Zixthan stood before the High Council of the Zinthari hegemony on their capital world of Nexus Prime. The council chamber was a masterpiece of architecture, with crystal walls that reached toward the sky and floating platforms, where the representatives of 12 different species sat in judgment. The beauty of the place, which had always filled him with pride, now seemed somehow fragile compared to the brutal efficiency of human engineering. The questioning had been going on for hours. Every detail of the encounter with humanity was examined, analyzed, and questioned again. Some council members refused to believe his reports. Others demanded that he be punished for the loss of so many ships. A few seemed genuinely frightened by what he had described. Let me understand this correctly, said Counselor Vextar, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms. You are telling us that a single human ship destroyed 37 vessels of the 47th Fleet? Yes, Counselor, Zixthon replied for the 10th time. The human dreadnought was more powerful than our entire fleet combined. And you believe their technology is superior to ours? I do not believe it, Counselor. I know it. I have seen the sensor readings and the battle recordings. The humans have developed weapons and defensive systems that exceed our capabilities. Counselor Morden, an elderly reptilian being who had led the council for over 2 centuries, raised his hand for silence. Admiral Zixthon, show us these recordings again. The chamber's holographic display activated, showing the battle from multiple angles. The council members watched in silence as the human dreadnought systematically destroyed Xanthari ships with weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. When the recording ended, the chamber remained quiet for several minutes. How is this possible? Counselor Vextar finally asked. Our intelligence reports indicated that human technology was centuries behind ours. The intelligence reports were wrong, Zixthon said. Or perhaps the humans deliberately misled us. The ships we observed in their outer system were decoys, or obsolete vessels. Their real military capability was hidden until we forced them to reveal it. You are suggesting they planned this encounter? Morden asked. I am suggesting they were prepared for it. The humans knew we were coming long before we arrived in their system. They had time to position their forces and plan their response. We walked into a trap. The council members exchanged worried glances. The hegemony had been expanding for 3,000 years without encountering serious resistance. The idea that a primitive species could not only resist but defeat them was almost incomprehensible. What else can you tell us about their military capabilities? Asked Counselor Zilnoth, an insectoid being whose species specialized in military analysis. Based on what I observed, they have at least 20 ships of the same class as the one we encountered, each one capable of destroying a significant portion of our fleet. Their weapon technology is completely different from ours, designed for maximum destructive effect rather than elegance or efficiency. 20 ships, Zilnoth repeated. That would make their fleet comparable in power to our entire navy. At minimum, Zixthon agreed. And that assumes they have not built more since our encounter. The humans seem capable of rapid military expansion when they feel threatened. Counselor Morden leaned forward in his chair. Admiral, what is your assessment of human intentions? Do they plan to attack hegemony worlds? Zixthon considered the question carefully. I do not believe so, at least not immediately. The human commander, Admiral Stone, could have destroyed my entire fleet but chose not to. He allowed us to leave with a message rather than eliminating all witnesses. This suggests they prefer defensive rather than offensive strategies. But they will fight if attacked again? Without question. And next time they will be even more prepared. The humans learn quickly from their experiences. The council chamber fell silent again as the members absorbed this information. Finally, Counselor Morden spoke. Admiral Zixthon, you have served the hegemony faithfully for many years. Your report is troubling, but we do not doubt your honesty. The question now is how we should respond to this new situation. With respect, Counselor, Zixthon said, I believe we have only one option. We must establish diplomatic relations with humanity as equals, not as potential subjects. Several council members began talking at once, their voices rising in agitation. The idea of treating any species as an equal was revolutionary in hegemony politics. Impossible, Counselor Vextar declared. The hegemony does not negotiate with primitives. They are not primitives, Zixthon replied firmly. They are a military power that exceeds our own capabilities. Treating them as anything less would be a fatal mistake. Perhaps we should send a larger fleet, suggested Counselor Hiplon, whose species had provided many of the hegemony's best generals. The humans may be strong, but they cannot stand against our full military might. Zixthon shook his head. Counselor, our full military might consist of approximately 15,000 ships spread across 800 star systems. The humans destroyed 37 of our vessels in less than an hour using a single ship. Even if we gathered our entire fleet, victory would not be guaranteed, and the cost would be enormous. What do you suggest instead? Morden asked. Send a diplomatic mission. Not a conquest fleet, but genuine ambassadors. Offer to establish trade relations and mutual defense agreements. Treat them as we would treat any other major power. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Many council members were outraged at the suggestion that the hegemony should treat any species as an equal. Others argued that showing weakness would encourage other species to rebel. Councillor Morden called for order. The council will consider Admiral Zixthan's recommendations. For now, all expansion operations in human space are suspended pending further discussion. As the council session ended, Zixthan felt a mixture of relief and worry. He had delivered his message, but he was not sure the council would listen. Too many of them still believed in hegemony superiority, despite the evidence he had presented. Over the following weeks, reports began arriving from other sectors. Several species that had been conquered years earlier were showing signs of rebellion. Word of humanity's victory over the 47th Fleet was spreading throughout the galaxy, inspiring resistance movements on dozens of worlds. The hegemony's military commanders were demanding action. They wanted to make an example of humanity, to discourage further rebellions. But the council was divided. Some members supported diplomatic contact, while others pushed for military action. Finally, after months of debate, a decision was reached. A combined diplomatic and military mission would be sent to the human system. The diplomats would attempt to negotiate a peaceful settlement, while the military force would serve as backup in case negotiations failed. Zixthan was given command of the mission. As he prepared to return to human space, he wondered what he would find there. Had the humans built more dreadnoughts? Were they preparing for war? Or would they be willing to discuss peaceful coexistence? 3 months after his first encounter with humanity, Zixthan found himself approaching the human system again. This time, his fleet was smaller, but included the hegemony's best diplomats and most advanced ships. He hoped it would be enough to avoid another disaster. As his ships exited hyperspace, they were immediately met by a human patrol. The voice that came over the communication channel was familiar. Admiral Zixthan, this is Admiral Chen. Welcome back to Earth space. Admiral, Stone is waiting to speak with you. Zixthan smiled grimly. At least the humans remembered him. That was probably a good sign. Admiral Chen, I come bearing a message from the High Council of the Zenthari hegemony. We wish to discuss the possibility of peaceful relations between our peoples. Understood, Admiral. Please follow our escort ships to the designated meeting area. And, Admiral? Yes? This time I suggest you keep your weapons powered down. As the Zenthari fleet followed the human escorts deeper into the solar system, Zixthan could see that the humans had been busy. New orbital stations surrounded several planets, and there were more ships than before. Most importantly, he could detect at least 6 massive energy signatures that indicated the presence of additional dreadnoughts. Humanity had spent the last 3 months preparing for his return. The question was whether they were preparing for war or peace. He would find out soon enough.